Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're live here this evening. Let's talk TEFL. Oops. My computer is presently having some network issues, so this is coming to you from my phone. Hopefully the computer will be back up in a few minutes and we can get back on with the regular live stream instead of using the backup equipment. Okay, so we'll just wait for some of the folks to come in here. There we go. We've got one in having a look. Hi, if you've got a Gmail account, log into your Gmail. You can use the chat box, and I'd love to chat interactively with you. Okay, we've got a couple of questions that came both in the YouTube messaging and on Facebook that I'd like to address here to start with this evening. So the first question was from Ronaldo, and he was asking or saying, I'm interested in working abroad as an EFL teacher. What do I need to do? And this is a pretty common question, so we'll address this one first off the bat. If you're looking at working abroad as a TEFL teacher, usually most people meet the minimum requirements to work abroad as a teacher. They've got a bachelor's degree, they've got a clean police check, which is basically what you need. And hello, Sarek. Pleased to meet you. Okay, the other thing, especially those from the Philippines and the other non-native speakers of English need to do, is get a Toeic or an Ielts test. Actually, in countries that require it, there's usually 3 tests that are accepted. The Ielts from the British Council is probably the best test to get. It's also the most expensive. In the Philippines, it's about 6,700 pesos, or in whatever the local currency is elsewhere. In other countries, it's equivalent currencies. The next test is the TOEFL, TOEFL test, not to be confused with the TESOL certificate, and we'll get into those in a little bit. And the third test that is accepted by immigration services is the TOEIC. And the TOEIC is the cheapest of the 3 tests that you can take. So if you need to take an English proficiency test to work abroad as an English teacher, then TOEIC should be your first choice because it's the easiest and cheapest. If you don't have access to a TOEIC test, you're in Africa or some places in India, then you have to do the Ielts test with the British Council, or see if there's a local test center for the TOEFL IBT. Okay, so now we've got, you need 5 documents in total to work abroad as an English teacher. You need your degree. If you're from the Philippines, it needs to be authenticated. That means take your degree down to the local CHED office and get a CAV put on it. CAV, certification, authentication, and verification. Again, that's from the CHED office. And it takes a few days to get done, but it's not expensive. It's about 40 pesos, I think. Once you've got the CAV on your degree, you go to the DFA and you get a red ribbon put on it. Now your degree is ready for use abroad. Okay, the next step is your TOR. You need to have a university-issued transcript of records, and most people usually put that with their degree and CAV, all in one bundle pack with the red ribbon on it. The next thing that you need to take care of is your police check, your NBI, and the NBI has an expiry of 6 months. But for use in most countries, they will accept it up to 1 year old. The next step is your TOEIC test. get your TOEIC test done. Hopkins is the test center in the Philippines. They have offices in Cebu, Makati, Baguio, and Angeles. The cost in the Philippines is 2,000 pesos, and depending on where you get your test done, you can get the result in as quickly as a week, or in some cases as long as 3 weeks to get the result sent back to you from the TOEIC test center. The last thing you need to get is your passport. And your passport has to be valid for more than 1 year. So if you've got an old passport and it's going to expire in 10 months, go get a new passport. You cannot travel on an expiring passport. CIRIC, yes, you can get the TOEIC test or an Ielts test in Taiwan, or you can fly into Thailand and you can do your TOEIC test here. Pre-book your TOEIC test seat, pre-reserve your seat for as soon as possible after your arrival date, because you only get 30 days when you fly in. And the TOEIC test center in Bangkok is very, very, very busy at this time of year, because everybody who is not a native speaker has to have a valid TOEIC test when they renew or update their visas and work permits. So about every 2 years, everybody in the country has to get a new TEFL certificate or a new TOEIC certificate. So if you're flying into Thailand to get your TOEIC test done, make sure that you have a reservation before you get on the airplane, or you could end up here stuck with an 8-week wait list to get a seat to take your test, and you only have a 30-day arrival date after you get in Thailand. So whenever possible, you're encouraged to do your proficiency test outside of Thailand. Oh, if you can't fly, it's going to be hard to get from Taiwan to Thailand. Unless you plan to swim or take a boat. Okay, back to the subject at hand. You've got the 5 things. You've got your degree with your transcripts, your authentication verification, you've got your police clearance, your TOEIC test, and your passport. Now it's time to book a plane ticket. If you're coming from the Philippines, if you're a Filipino citizen, your biggest problem is going to get out of the Philippines. Now, constitutionally, you have the right to travel, and they don't have the right to prevent you from flying somewhere as a tourist. Immigration, in conjunction with the POEA, will prevent anybody from flying if they think you're going as an economic refugee or you're going to look for work and you do not have a POEA clearance to fly. So if you want to fly as a tourist, you need to Google or look at some articles about offloading in Manila and how to avoid being offloaded. The bottom line about offloading, if you're going to fly as a tourist, even if you're really looking for a job, make sure that your mindset when you get to the airport is, I'm a tourist. I'm going to go look at elephants and tigers and temples, and I'm going to see the sights in Bangkok or Chiang Mai or wherever it is that you're flying to. Have the mindset that you are a tourist. If they ask, do you have your degree? Say no. You don't have your degree. Right? Because if you have a degree, why would a tourist have their degree? You don't have your documents. They're all tucked away safely in your suitcase, and if they ask, you can ask them the question back, why would I need a degree? I'm a tourist. Why would I need a TOEIC test? I'm a tourist. Why would I need other documents? I'm a tourist. I'm going to go look at temples and tigers and elephants. Okay, so always keep that mindset of being a tourist when you decide to travel. You need to keep that first and foremost in your mind, that I'm a tourist. Now, rumor has it that you have to be rich to fly as a tourist. That's not true. You do have to be able to afford to fly as a tourist. So, you know, it was a graduation present from my family. I have $500 spending money in my purse. When I come back, I have to, you know, I have to go to work and you know, for my family, that kind of thing. So you don't have to be rich, but you do have to be able to afford to be a tourist, and not an economic migrant or an economic refugee. So now that you've made it past passport control in the Philippines, you're on your way to the boarding gate for the airplane. You get on the airplane, you fly to Bangkok, you get off the airplane in Bangkok, or you get off the airplane in Ho Chi Minh City, or you get off the airplane in Saigon. The first thing you do is go through passport control again, coming into the country. And most of the time, they're pretty easy to deal with. You know, do you have a hotel reservation? Do you have some spending money to cover your expenses while you're here? And the important one is, do you have an exit ticket out of the country? If you're flying in as a tourist, they want to make sure that you're going to leave. You don't need a TEFL test, Mary. You do not, I shouldn't say that specifically. If you're coming to Thailand, you do not need a TEFL certificate. TEFL is teaching English as a foreign language. You do not need a TEFL course. You do need a Toeic test. Okay, you can do the Toeic test, as I mentioned earlier, in Cebu, Makati, Angeles, or Baguio. If you have lots of money and time to wait around, you can fly to Thailand and do your Toeic test here. But be aware that from April until June or July, the Toeic test center is really busy, and you could expect up to an 8-week wait to get a seat to take your Toeic test. So if you can at all possibly manage it, take your Toeic test before you fly. If you're going to Vietnam or China, you also need a TEFL certificate. TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language. There are a few places you can do it online. They're not expensive. They're between $1 and $200 US. You can do an on-site TEFL certificate that'll cost you closer to $1,000 US, but it's a far superior course. They'll actually teach you something. I've had people that I've assisted doing online TEFL courses, and there's no lectures. They just get the textbook and a reading list, and they're told to answer the questions and do the exercises. And it's really, really difficult. If you're interested in what does a TEFL course look like, on my YouTube channel, I have a playlist called TEFL Course. It's 25 lectures. They're about an hour long each. And there's also a downloadable PDF workbook and textbook. It's all free. There's no registration. Just click on the first video in the TEFL course playlist. In the video description, underneath the video, you'll see the links to download the workbook and the textbook. You can watch the lectures, you can do the workbook, do the textbook. And it will give you a lot of help when you go to do an online TEFL course, rather than do a face-to-face TEFL course. The disadvantage to the one on my YouTube channel is I do not issue a certificate of completion when you're done. It's free, so I'm not going to pay money to make certificates and send them to you. If you want a certificate, you'll have to pay some company that does that as their business. So once you've got your TEFL course, that also opens up Vietnam and China as TEFL teachers for those that want to work in markets other than Thailand. If you want to work in Cambodia, the pay is not very good, but the cost of living is really, really low. And there are no requirements to work as a teacher other than being able to speak English, fly in, buy your business visa, or get an e-visa before you fly, land in Cambodia, and go to work at a language center teaching English somewhere. In Thailand, there are a lot of options. It's a mature market for TEFL teachers. So you can work in language centers, you can work in mainstream schools, or you can work for a few government offices or private companies like hotels that will engage TEFL teachers to work for them as well. Of all of those options, probably the best choice is the hotels probably pay the best for TEFL teachers, but they're the hardest jobs to find. Public schools are probably the easiest jobs to get. They're not the best paid. Private schools are somewhere in between. And for those who are licensed teachers with 850 or 900 Toeic scores, getting a job and a few years of classroom experience, getting a job in an international school is always an option. And if you have those qualifications, then countries like Brunei are also open to you. And there you'd be making $1,500 US. So that's what, about 175 to 100,000, about 75,000 pesos per month, plus benefits, working in places like Brunei. So the better your qualifications, the better your options are. Okay, back to questions. I hope I answered your question there, Mary. And your other question that you had, looking for a TEFL center near your town. I don't know where you live, so I can't tell you what's close to your town. I do know that in most of the Philippines, actual TEFL centers are either located, if you're talking online TEFL centers, we're talking about, okay, in Makati, you've got most of the TEFL centers in the Metro Manila area that are not too far away from you. And in the bottom of this video, when we're finished here about 8 o'clock, I'll have a list of links to online TEFL companies. It's not complete. I'm still working on building the list. But online TEFL companies that hire Filipinos. And there are also the companies that will allow you to put up a profile and market yourself independently from the company itself. So you put up your profile, you put up your rates, you put up descriptions of what you do, and then clients find you and contact you, and you can work on Skype, you can work on audio, you can work on audio-visual. You can use whatever form and format is agreeable between you. And you can use things like Alipay if they're in China, or PayPal, or if they're elsewhere. So that by doing that, signing into PayPal, linking it to your bank account, and going through the process of properly linking it, once that's done, then your clients can pay you with a credit card on their end, and you get cash deposited to your bank account in the Philippines. So it's really convenient that way. So they can upload to PayPal, you can download the cash from PayPal in pesos or in dollars, whatever currency you want to work in. Okay, so There will be a list down below in the video description shortly after we get done the video at 8 o'clock. And you'll be able to take a look at the list of companies and pick one that is close and works for you. Okay, we had another question, if I can find it. Ronaldo, we've covered your questions. The next one I want to talk about is working online. And some people have said they've got problems when they're working online with different equipment setups. Or what do I need to work online? Do I need a really high-end computer, a MacBook Pro or a MacBook? What do I need? And the simple truth is, any basic laptop will work for teaching online. Depending on the company and the platform that you're using. Some of the really top-end companies will require that you've got an i5 or better computer with 8 gigs of RAM and a fairly good video card. Most of the rest of the companies that do have their own platforms, you can get by with a basic i3 computer or a quad core from AMD. It doesn't need to be high-end. Just something a little bit better than a netbook on a Celeron chip, and you'll be doing just fine. The webcam in those computers is usually adequate for the purpose. And then for your headset and microphone, I went out and found a Signal gaming headphone. And I like to use this one when I need a headphone. Other times I'll use when I've got problems with outside noises. I have a directional microphone, and I'm currently using it right now because my computer went down and I'm on my smartphone. So this is coming to you from my smartphone, and I'm using a directional microphone. So I'm hoping that you can actually hear me reasonably well using the directional mic, and it should eliminate most of the background noises. So you're not hearing the noisy aircon and the fan that's sitting right beside me and blowing across the microphone. The fuzzy cat on the microphone should eliminate most of that background noise. So you're just watching and listening to me talking away at you. Okay, other questions. I've talked about the TEFL course on my channel. Some of the other things that I've got on my channel. Now this is more for using Skype Vietnam. The net is not good. Is there a better app that you can use? It depends on what they're using as well. A lot of times if you're on a smartphone rather than a laptop on both ends, you can use devices that were made to use lower end bandwidth services. So WeChat, WhatsApp, Line, L-I-N-E app. They've all got video phone capability, and they're lower density. So use that, and use, where'd my telephone headset go? And use your telephone headset with your microphone in it. And it's usually adequate. If they can handle a full 1080p on a Skype connection. Again, it depends on what you're using on your end. If you're on a fiber connection, or are you using 3G or a 4G connection. If you're using a slower 3 or 4G connection and trying to use a 1080p cam, it's really going to lag and get stuck. Whereas if you're using a smartphone and the Line app or WhatsApp or WeChat, then they tend to be a lot more efficient in the use of the bandwidth, and they don't drag down as much. So yeah, here's my Samsung, it's all tangled up at the moment, my Samsung headset. And I find that when I'm using my smartphone, it's usually adequate for Skype chat or a line chat. I don't use WhatsApp and WeChat very much. Just personal preference. And in Thailand, we tend to use Line a lot. So there's my basic Samsung headphone, and it plugs into the back of my phone, and it works adequately with Skype, and doesn't chew up as much bandwidth that way when compared to using a laptop. Okay, so where are we here? Pull this up, see if we have any other questions that I've missed. Forgive me for taking a minute. Okay. When taking the TEFL, do you have to study before the test? If you're taking a TEFL course, study is, it's like any course, the TEFL course. And we should probably clear up some anacronyms here, or some initialisms. There are 6 common initialisms that are used when we're talking in the industry. There's CELTA, TESL, TEFL, TESL, T-E-S-L. And those 4 terms refer to teacher training courses. Okay, TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language. TESL, teaching English as a second language. TESL, teaching English to speakers of foreign languages. And CELTA, which is the Cambridge brand TESL, and it stands for Certificate in English Language Teaching to Adults. The other thing that is commonly referred to or referenced when we're talking are the 3 proficiency tests. There's the Toeic, test of English test of English in international communication. There's the TOEFL, test of English as a foreign language, and Ielts, which is the International Language Testing System. So those are the 3 tests. You can't really study for them because they're a proficiency test. So when you're doing the TOEIC, you're going to do 2 parts, listening and reading. In the listening part of the test, you'll listen to about a 1-minute soundtrack recording, and then there will be 3 questions to answer based on what you've heard in that recording. And the test strategy for doing that part of the test is to quickly read the 3 questions, listen to the soundtrack, and then answer the 3 questions. They're all multiple choice. And then answer the 3 questions. If you try and listen and answer at the same time, you'll usually miss the second question in the set, and your score will be reduced by about 30%. Okay, so quickly read the questions, listen to the recording, answer the questions, proceed to the next set. And it takes, I think it's about a 90-minute test. Then you'll get a short break, then you'll come back for the reading test. The reading test, the reading passages are really, really long. So when you go to do the reading test, you cannot read from start to finish in the test and finish in time. You only have 75 minutes. The strategy for doing the reading test is to look at the questions, read the questions, understand the questions, then scan through the article that you need, that the answers are in, and find the answers and answer the questions. So read, scan, answer. That way you don't have to read through the entire test paper. And if you try and read from top to bottom, you usually end up needing to read the article twice, which takes twice as long, and you run out of time. So read the questions, scan the article, answer the questions, move on to the next one. And by using those two test strategies, you should improve your score on your TOEIC test by about 30%. I've seen people using those testing strategies go from first tests that are somewhere in the mid 500 score range, and that's not enough to get a visa, to as high as 700 after employing the strategy, because they have time to finish the whole test and they don't miss questions because they were trying to read and listen at the same time, or because they were trying to read through the reading part of the test and not get finished in time, so they quickly guess and put mark in answers on the test. So your strategy is, for the listening part of the test, read the question, listen to the recording, answer the multiple choice questions, move on to the next one. For the reading part of the test, read the questions, scan the article, answer the questions, move on. If you miss something, or if something you can't find it right away, don't worry about it. Skip it, move on, come back if you have time at the end of the test. Okay, if you try and start fussing over a single question, you're going to lose time on a timed test, and there are only 5 points per question. 100 questions in the test, and 95 questions in that part of the test. So don't waste time looking for it, right? Read the questions, skim the article, mark down your answers, move on. If you don't get it, move on and then come back. And again, you'll improve your test-taking strategy. Okay, for those that are teaching Ielts and TOEIC test strategies, or Ielts and TOEIC test to Japanese and Korean students online, again, remind them of those same testing strategies. And then when you start working with your students, start doing the same kind of thing, so they get into the habit of check the questions, listen to the recording, or listen to you, and then answer back. Don't know how to teach students with TOEIC. You're not teaching students with TOEIC, you're teaching them how to pass the TOEIC test. Okay, so by teaching them how to use the strategies, they learn how to do the test. Then you work on improving their proficiency at skim-scan techniques for reading, for skimming an article, and finding the answers. Right? So skim-scan is what you're teaching them to do, and strategies are how they use them. So there's the two parts of that when you're teaching students who are doing TOEIC tests or preparing for TOEIC or an Ielts test. When students have to do a writing test, one of the things students try to do is they try to develop complex sentences too early, and they end up writing gibberish that doesn't make sense. The first thing you need to do is get students to write like they talk. Okay, so as an exercise, getting your students to write as they talk. Then examining what they've written and correcting that draft into a revised version of their writing will help them improve their essay writing for the essay portion of the tests. So a big part of what you're doing is doing the writing, read it and revise it. But get them to start using simple sentences correctly. Once they accomplish that task, then start moving into complex sentences using conjunctions like and, or, but. So first step, simple sentences. Next step, you start using conjunctions and combining two simple sentences. Then you can start working on complex sentences like da-da-da, since da-da-da, until da-da-da. And you can start building complex sentences from there. Okay, another thing with teaching online as compared to teaching in a classroom. When you're working in a classroom, it's easy to interact with your students because they're right there in your face. When you're online with students, it gets more difficult because students tend to get shy, and they won't respond back to you. And because it's one-on-one, typically with an online student, we need to start getting them to do something more than just parrot phrases back to you. Students are really good at parroting something. If you say something, they can usually repeat it reasonably accurately, or at least after a couple of tries. But that's not learning language. That's just repeating what they've heard, and as soon as the session's finished, they've forgotten it already, and it's gone. So we need to start getting into communicative teaching methods, where we're focusing on, instead of grammar, we're focusing on sentences for communication. And we don't worry too much about the grammar at this stage. We're worried about being able to communicate an idea. What are you trying to tell me? What do you think I am saying to you? Tell me back. Right? And again, because we don't have the classroom dynamics, they can't work in pairs, and you can't do small group work. So you have to start working one-on-one with your students and getting them to do most of the talking. Otherwise, your student will get real tired of you in about 20 sessions and hang up and go somewhere else. And if you want to make money, you'd be better off doing video chat rather than online teaching. And hello, I see somebody with a Korean name there. Let's see. Gultip. Ah, hi. Where are you from? Where in Korea? I used to work in Suwon and Gwangju and Seongnam. I was a teacher in Gyeonggi Education Office for about 10 years. You can't listen to English. Listening practice takes time. Okay, you can write it down. Listening practice takes time. A strategy that you can use is you can try, if you can write, you can read. If you can read, you can watch, download and watch English videos and turn on the English subtitles so that you're reading and listening at the same time. And remember, you're doing this as a learning exercise, not for entertainment. So while the movie might be nice to watch, you're actually trying to match the dialogue that you hear to the dialogue that you read. And as an independent learner, without a teacher hand in hand, listening and watching, reading and listening, and linking the words that you read to the words that you hear will help improve your listening over time. So videos with English subtitles, and it's a learning exercise, not entertainment, will often help you. So here's a second, let me type that in for you. Okay, I hope that helps you a little bit um, with your listening. The other option is, to get onto places like YouTube, where you've got either interactive sessions where you can listen and there's a chat box that you can type back, or things that you can watch that would be of interest to you. A lot of times there are subtitles on YouTube videos that you can turn on, so you can watch the subtitles there, or just try listening to smaller things of interest. I find that extra credits is a nice way to work on listening exercises. Let's see if I can find it here for you. And there it is, extra credits. Okay, and that's not a language learning channel, it's a history learning channel. But it's easy to follow along, so you can look at using that for helping with learning your listening. Okay, some of the other questions that I had, let me have a look. Hardware. We talked a little bit about hardware. How to become a better online teacher to improve your income. Okay, when we're talking about income, especially for online teachers, most teachers have a base salary of between 140 and 200 pesos per hour. Some of the better ones will get up to $6 per hour. But remember, you don't usually have hour-long classes. They're 20 minutes or 25 minutes or 30-minute classes. So it'll take 2 or 3 classes to get that $6. So other things that you can look at, depending on the platform that you're using, getting friends to sign on to your platform as a teacher will often get you a finder's bonus. If you get a new student who's using you on a trial and they sign up and stay with you, that'll usually get you a bonus as well as a regular student. And those are good things to have. One of the things that you want to think about when you're working with students, especially with younger students, and I do a lot of online work with children between 5 and 8 or 9 years old, is to have props and toys. Quite often they'll be shy to talk to you or interact with you, but if you can use a toy or a puppet, Danica, can you give me a couple of the toys? The reindeer and the pony, MLP, yeah, and one of the reindeer. No, I just need one, thanks. I only have 2 hands. Okay, so we can use different toys, and the toys can talk to each other, and the children will accept that And they'll interact with the toys even though they won't interact with you. And it can be as simple as an old Christmas ornament from, you know, times gone by to My Little Pony that happened to be my daughter's outgrown, and we have sitting around the house as basically as a decoration now. So we can use the toys to interact with each other, and we can have a dialogue. So they can talk to each other and have a dialogue, and the student can interact with the toys rather than interacting with the teacher. And a lot of students are too shy to talk to the teacher or to talk directly to the teacher, but they'll interact with the toy, and they're very comfortable doing that because they do that in their normal life anyway. So that's a good way to start working with your kids. Once they start to interact with you, you'll start getting more referrals. You'll get busier. Okay, bye. Thank you for visiting. They'll start working with you and interacting more, and they'll start picking up more language. That'll make mother happy. You're leaving too. Okay, bye, Mary. Thank you for joining us. Leave your questions that you think of, and we'll come back to them next week. How are we doing for time? We got about 10 minutes left. So, for the remaining 3 people that are in here, do you have any questions or anything I can help you with specifically? I don't know what other questions you might have. So if you're logged into your Gmail account, you can use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. You can type in your questions. They'll pop up on the screen, and we can answer them for you. If you're not logged in here, catch me on Facebook, and we can answer your questions on Facebook, either there or bring them back here for questions next week. Next week, I think I want to talk a little bit about hardware and your back office when you're teaching. It's real easy to get a cheap fix for your back office. You'll notice that I've got this nice library behind me this week. Last week I had sort of a green background with toys on it. Posters are cheap and easy. Blankets with children's designs on them make good backdrops for your area. Pick up some old toys that you can use for your online teaching. It also works with older learners, but you might want to move away from My Little Pony to something that's more age appropriate. If you're teaching older students or Korean businessmen, they're probably not interested in My Little Pony. They'd be more interested in something a little more mature. Artwork is another option. Props are always a good thing when you're working online, because when you're working online, it's the props that take it away from being just you talking to the student, sort of like what we're doing here, and into something that's more interactive with your student. Excuse me. So with online teaching, we want to try and be as interactive as we can with our students. Ideally here we'd have lots of questions in the chat box. There have only been a few tonight, so we really haven't had a lot of interaction between myself and you guys. And I didn't get there were a lot of people said I would like to see or pop in, but I didn't get a lot of questions ahead of time, so I'm struggling a little bit to know exactly what it is specifically that you're looking for, or questions that you would like answered. Beyond that, I don't know what else to tell you for this evening. And let's see, what other questions did we have up here? Okay. What do you need and how to get hired? We talked about that. How to be a better teacher, what documents to work abroad, the process for becoming an OFW. Okay, as I said when I first came online today, once this video goes into the recorded session that'll follow in about a half an hour, it'll be uploaded directly to YouTube. In the video description at the bottom of the video, there will be interactive. I'll put up things like reviews and comments on different online teaching companies that hire Filipinos. So who they are, what they pay, what their form and format is, and what you need to do to work with them. So who they teach, what they teach, how much they pay, how they pay, all those kinds of details will be in the links that I'll put in the video description at the bottom of the video when this one goes live when this one goes recorded in about a half an hour's time. So come back and have a look at the video channel anytime that you want. So bookmark it. ttompatz, ttompatz, and come and visit. Don't be shy. And you can come back there. There are about 6 or 8 playlists down below on my channel with various things. So there's stuff for teachers, there's the TEFL course, some of the other playlists. What else have we got on there? Okay, we've got the recorded TEFL workshops, TEFL course, teacher stuff, how to become a Filipino teacher abroad. So there's 3 videos there that walk you through the process. There's some odds and ends from different conferences, Cambridge YLE for those that may be interested. If you're teaching students who are going to be taking the YLE exams, there's a playlist on there that has examples of the starters, the movers, and the flyers tests. Both the listening exam and the reading writing tests are linked on there and downloadable. So if you have kids that are doing the Cambridge test, that's available on there as well. The 2 main ones, or the 3 main ones of interest, 4 main ones: teacher stuff, TEFL course, how to become a Filipino teacher, English teacher abroad, and the TEFL workshops that are full of useful information for mostly Filipinos. There's another channel up there called Teach Abroad for non-Filipinos, for native speakers who are looking at going abroad as TEFL teachers, primarily in Asia, although most of it holds true for other parts of the world as well. Okay, so that's pretty much it for tonight, I think. There are no more questions coming in, and I'm running out of things to say. So I'm going to say thank you for stopping by. And if you found any of this useful, we'll be back next Friday at 8 o'clock Philippine time, 7 o'clock Thai time. Next week I'll be using the regular computer and not my smartphone. So we'll have a little bit better video production for you to have a look at. It won't be quite so blurry as this one is. And that's pretty much it. So I'll say goodbye for now and take care. We'll see you all next week. If you found the information useful, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Tell them to come back. The more questions you have, the more interactive and informative our Friday hour will be. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mr. Bin. And we'll see you all next time. Bye for now. Sawadee Kap.